You said one sentence, just one, a quiet observation spoken without anger about something that hurt you, and within seconds, you were the one apologizing. You don't remember deciding to apologize. You don't remember agreeing that you were wrong. But somehow, in the space of a single exchange, the conversation flipped, and you are now comforting the person who hurt you. Most people call this gaslighting. That's close, but it's not quite right. What actually happened has a name. Psychologists have been documenting it since the 1990s. It has a structure so precise, so repeatable, that once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. It's called DARVO, and it may be the single most effective manipulation pattern in the human behavioral repertoire. In 1997, a psychologist named Jennifer Freyd was studying something else entirely, the way memory behaves after trauma, particularly abuse within trusted relationships. She wasn't looking for a manipulation tactic. She was looking for patterns in how perpetrators responded when finally confronted. What she found was strange, almost eerily consistent. Across unrelated cases, different relationships, different decades, different types of harm, the accused followed the same three-step sequence in the same order almost every time. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. DARVO. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a coaching technique anyone had taught them. It appeared to be something closer to instinct, a psychological reflex that activates the moment accountability approaches. And once Freyd mapped it, researchers started finding it everywhere. In courtrooms, in marriages, in corporate boardrooms, in parent-child relationships, in political scandals played out on live television. The pattern didn't care about context. It only cared about one thing: survival of the self-image. Step 1, deny. The first move happens fast, almost too fast to notice. That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. I never said that. On the surface, this looks like simple dishonesty. But something deeper is occurring, something researchers in cognitive psychology find far more unsettling than a calculated lie. Many people who deny do not experience it as lying. Their brain has already rewritten the memory to protect their identity. Studies on motivated reasoning show that the mind will distort recollection before it allows an admission of guilt to form. The denial isn't always a performance for you. Sometimes it's a performance the manipulator is giving to themselves, which means the person denying your reality may genuinely believe the false version, and that should terrify you more than a liar ever could, because a liar can be caught. A person who has already rewritten their own memory has nothing left to catch. Step 3, reverse victim and offender. This is the final move, the one that gives the pattern its name and its power. The offender doesn't just deflect blame, they become the victim. I can't believe you'd say this about me after everything I've done for you. You're trying to destroy me. Now the roles have fully inverted. The person who caused harm is in visible distress. The person who experienced harm is now positioned as the aggressor, cold, cruel, unreasonable. And here is the detail that makes DARVO so difficult to defend against. Bystanders almost always side with whoever appears more distressed in the moment, regardless of who caused the distress. Researchers studying this effect found that observers consistently misjudge blame based on visible emotional performance rather than factual sequence. Tears read as evidence, calm reads as guilt, which means the manipulator doesn't need to convince anyone of the truth. They only need to look more wounded than you do. Why this exists at all? Here is the uncomfortable question buried underneath all of this. Why does the human mind have a reflex this sophisticated, this fast, this consistent for protecting the self from accountability? Some evolutionary psychologists argue this isn't a flaw. It's a feature. In small ancestral groups, being cast out as an offender could mean losing access to food, protection, and survival itself. The mind that could convincingly reposition itself as blameless, even to itself, had a reproductive advantage over the mind that simply accepted guilt and fast expulsion. If that theory holds, then DARVO isn't a modern manipulation tactic at all. It's an ancient survival algorithm running quietly inside otherwise ordinary people, waiting for the exact moment accountability gets close enough to trigger it, which means the people who use it may not always be strategizing. They may simply be running code that was written into the species long before language existed. The cost. For the person on the receiving end, the damage compounds in a specific, well-documented way. Prolonged exposure to DARVO doesn't just create confusion in the moment. Researchers studying institutional betrayal abuse that occurs within relationships, the victim depends on found that DARVO exposure is associated with increased self-blame, decreased willingness to report harm, and long-term erosion of trust in one's own perception. In other words, the tactic doesn't just win the argument, it rewires the target's relationship with reality itself. Victims of repeated DARVO often describe a specific haunting symptom, not sadness, not even anger, but a quiet, persistent doubt about whether they are allowed to trust what they remember. That doubt is not an accident. It is the entire point. Recognition. There's no perfect defense against DARVO, but there is a starting point, and it is smaller than people expect. Notice the sequence, not the content. Denial followed immediately by counterattack, followed immediately by a role reversal. That specific rhythm is the signature. The content will change every time. The structure rarely does. Once you can see the shape of it, something shifts. You stop asking, am I crazy for feeling this way? You start asking a different question, a quieter one. Why does this always happen in exactly the same order? Somewhere right now, the sequence is playing out in a kitchen, in a text message thread, in a meeting room with the door closed. Someone is being told they misremembered their own pain, and in a few seconds, if the pattern holds, as it almost always does, they will find themselves comforting the very person who hurt them, not because they are weak, because the pattern was never built to be resisted by willpower. It was built to be invisible. The only real defense was never emotional. It was never about being stronger or less sensitive or more prepared. It was simply this, knowing the shape of the thing before it arrives. Because once you have seen it once clearly for what it is, you can never fully unsee it again.